Welcome back to the deep dive. We know you, the learner, are interested in where technology creates these structural, almost insurmountable competitive advantages. And today, we're tackling a topic that sounds, on the surface, just utterly boring. Insurance.
Hold that thought, because the documents you shared with me, these are excerpts from a very recent investor presentation. They show the revolution happening inside this. This multi-trillion-dollar industry is anything but boring.
Okay.
This is a story about deep data science, machine learning, and how a truly technology-first company is aiming to just completely upend the market.
All right, let's unpack this then. Our mission today is to figure out how this company plans to achieve what they call untouchable pricing. I mean, they're claiming their cost structure, their ability to quantify risk is so far beyond the incumbents that competitors just do. They literally cannot match their premiums. And they hinge that entire promise on two core interlocking concepts: precision in risk assessment and massive automation in, well, everything else.
And to frame why that matters, you really have to understand the starting line. Traditional insurance. It's all built on the law of averages. As their own materials put it, the incumbents are pricing cardboard cutouts of people.
Cardboard cutouts, right.
Yeah.
So if you, the customer, are just judged on these basic proxy indicators like your age, where you live, maybe a credit score, you just get thrown into this huge bucket with thousands of other drivers who are actually wildly different from you.
And that's the core flaw in the business, that inability to accurately see an individual's risk. It leaves these massive exploitable gaps in the market.
It's the definition of a strategic opportunity, but it also seems so obvious,
Well, that raises the big question, right? If the opportunity is so clear, why haven't the giants, the ones with billions in R&D, already fixed this?
Because it's hard and expensive.
It's expensive, and the old system works. Well, just well enough. I mean, these old methods are blunt instruments. They were designed for a world that didn't have real-time data.
Okay, so let's get into the clearest evidence of how this opportunity is being exploited. We're talking about the flaw of averages and the power of precision telemetry.
Right.
So traditionally, if you chart 100 people who look similar on paper, they all get roughly the same price. The sources cite an average of around, what, $2,348?
Something like that, yeah. And what's just fascinating here is how wildly different the real-world driving habits are, even for people who look identical on paper. Continuous telemetry, this is a remote, precise vehicle data collection. It just shows that those proxies miss the mark entirely.
And this is where the money is won and lost. The source material gives us two perfect case studies: Jill and Jack. Let's start with Jill. Who is she?
Jill is the problem customer. I mean, for every single incumbent. Based on those proxy indicators, she looks like a decent average driver. She gets that average price.
$2,348.
But the continuous data, it tells a totally different story. Telemetry catches her, being a distracted driver. The source specifically says she's constantly using her phone behind the wheel. Her true risk profile is dramatically higher.
So what's her correct price then?
Well, their risk assessment shows she should actually be paying about $600 more than that average.
Wow.
So if this tech company prices her correctly at nearly $3,000, she's going to be furious.
Oh, absolutely. She'll be on Twitter saying they're 20% more expensive than Geico or Progressive.
Yeah.
And in a way, she's right, because this tech company is the only one correctly identifying her as a subsidized high-risk driver.
She's essentially being priced out of their system, which is the exact goal. They don't want her risk. They want her to go right back to the competitor that's incorrectly subsidizing her.
Okay, so goodbye, Jill. Now Jack. He's the golden goose.
Jack is the complete opposite. He's often penalized by the system because he falls into a proxy category that's typically seen as high risk. Maybe he's a younger driver or lives in a dense city,
Yeah.
But the data shows he's extremely careful, always observing speed limits, drives smoothly, avoids late-night trips.
So the continuous data actually gives him credit for his real behavior.
100%. His appropriate price, based on the precision of their modeling, should be $400 less than the average. So when Jack comes to them, he gets a 17% discount. And that feels like a phenomenal deal to him. For the first time, he's not paying for Jill's bad habits.
So what does this whole Jill and Jack dynamic mean for the bigger insurance market?
This is the critical macro effect. The sources state it pretty clearly. About 1/3 of all drivers are worse than average. They're the Jills. And they are being subsidized by the 2/3 of drivers who are cautious, the Jacks.
And because the traditional insurers can't tell the difference, they just charge everyone the same average price.
Exactly. And if they can't tell the difference, they suffer from something called adverse selection.
Can you just quickly break that down for anyone who might not know the term?
Sure. Adverse selection is simple. When an insurance company can't accurately price risk, they inadvertently attract the most expensive customers. The Jills realize they're overpaying at the tech company, so they all run back to the traditional insurers where their high risk is hidden and subsidized by the Jacks.
So the competitors are left with an increasingly expensive pool of high-risk customers.
While their best, safest drivers are leaving, it's the ultimate death spiral.
And conversely, for this tech company, correctly identifying Jack leads to positive selection.
Exactly. They attract the 2/3 of the population who are safer but are currently overpaying. That is the structural competitive advantage.
And the scale of this prize is just huge. The sources suggest this can save 2/3 of customers about 15% on their premiums. 15% might sound small, but in a mandatory industry like insurance, that's catastrophic for incumbents.
It truly is. I mean, we've seen this before. Think about companies that built multi-billion-dollar businesses on a simple promise like 15% savings in 15 minutes.
Right.
Now imagine delivering a guaranteed structural 15% savings to most of the population, and it's based on immutable data. This isn't just a marketing gimmick. It threatens the entire economic model of their competitors.
Okay, but here's where a skeptic, maybe an incumbent executive, would jump in. They'd say, wait a minute, telematics has been around since the 90s. Progressive invented it. We all use it. How is this any different?
And that's the most important question to ask. The answer, which we get into in Section 2, is that the industry's use of telematics is just. It's dramatically limited compared to this tech company.
How so?
Well, the sources cite a Wall Street Journal report from a few years back. It claimed less than 4% of U.S. policies used telematics. Even if we're generous and say, okay, maybe it's 9% today, this tech company is still using telematics 10 times more than the industry average.
10 times the adoption rate is huge, but the core difference isn't just volume, right? It's the depth and the duration.
That's the critical insight. Most competitors' telematics programs are non-continuous. They run for 2, maybe 4 weeks. It's just a snapshot. They capture some initial driving habits, price the policy, and then they stop collecting data.
Progressives literally call their program Snapshot. They take a picture, price it, and they're done.
Exactly. But contrast that with this tech company. For them, telematics is continuous. It's constantly streaming data for 92% of their business, for the whole policy. We're talking about 100 times difference in actual data usage, not just 10 times.
But why does that continuity matter so much? I mean, why can't they just rely on the first month of driving?
2 massive reasons. First, and this is the most important one, pricing improvement. Initial data is a good start, but it doesn't capture habit changes. The empirical data they shared, it shows a median user score changes by a staggering 23% between the first 30 days and 1 full year.
23%. So non-continuous programs are missing nearly a quarter of the necessary pricing adjustment for every single customer.
Yes. That 23% is the difference between correctly identifying Jack after he settled into a daily commute versus mispricing him based on his first few weeks of maybe being extra careful. Missing that much refinement. You're missing everything.
And the second reason for continuity is the nightmare scenario. Claims and fraud.
Right. If you just use a snapshot when an accident happens, you're back to the old way of doing things. Unreliable testimony, police reports, a lot of human investigation.
Slow, expensive, and leaves the door wide open for fraud.
Whereas with continuous data, you have an X-ray view of the driving right up to the millisecond of impact. The system measures everything. The crash dynamics, location, speed, direction, time.
So you can immediately help the driver, but it also just slashes fraud. It's much harder to lie when your insurer has the physics of the crash on file.
It's basically impossible. It completely shifts the power dynamic.
Okay, so let's move to Section 3, because collecting the data is only half the battle.
Yeah.
What you do with the data, that has to be the real technological moat here.
That's the highest layer of differentiation, proprietary data science. It's not enough to know someone braked hard. You need a sophisticated system machine learning, deep learning, to map that specific behavior, plus 100 other variables to the actual expected cost of risk, and then price it.
That sounds like an incredibly high barrier to entry. Have the traditional guys managed to build this?
Largely, no. The source material notes that out of all the incumbents, only one major competitor has reportedly built this capability themselves. The rest, they use off-the-shelf lookup tables. Think of it like a simple spreadsheet. If X happens, risk goes up by Y. It's only marginally better than the cardboard cutout method.
So you have the original cardboard cutout, then the standard industry telematics, which is a little better, and then this proprietary system, which is a dramatic qualitative leap forward.
And that leap is only possible because of their architecture. This tech company is built as a vertically integrated technology business, a single, unified system. They control the whole stack.
Which brings us back to the competition. You shared that jaw-dropping quote about Geico's architecture.
Yeah, from Ajit Jain, the vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, said Geico has over 600 legacy systems that don't properly communicate with each other.
600. That's not a modern tech company. That's an archaeological dig. It is the definition of a structural disadvantage. How can you integrate real-time AI when your foundation is just layers of mismatched old systems?
You can't. You're perpetually slowed down. Every update is a huge project. And this unified stack is what allows the new guys to achieve those two core pillars we talked about. Precision governs the loss ratio, and automation governs the cost ratio.
And that automation piece is just transformative.
It's what gives you those amazing experiences. 3-second claim payouts, a totally paperless process, and dramatically lower costs because machines are doing the work, not thousands of agents and call centers.
Which brings us to Section 4, and this is crucial for anyone analyzing the strategy. Why the standard metrics can be so misleading. I mean, if you're pricing 15% cheaper for 2/3 of the population to a traditional insurer, that sounds like a recipe for financial disaster.
It's the biggest investor worry, and it comes from looking at only half of the equation. Pricing 15% cheaper only hurts your loss ratio if your precision is wrong. But if you correctly identify Jack as low risk and price him low, the loss ratio for that specific customer stays perfectly constant. You're not taking on worse risk. You're taking on correctly priced risk.
So the magic happens when you factor in that automation dividend. The total premium a customer pays covers three things, right? The expected loss, the company's operating cost, and the margin.
Exactly. And the tech company is attacking that operating cost so aggressively through automation. By dropping their cost ratio, they can drop the total premium they charge without hurting their profitability.
Let's use the source's example. Acme Insurance versus the tech company. It makes it really clear.
Okay, so assume both companies take on the exact same risk. Let's say it's a $1,050 expected loss. Acme, the traditional insurer... Oh, wait. Let's stick to the source numbers for consistency. My apologies. The source says Acme charges a $2,000 premium for a risk that results in a 63% loss ratio. So that's an expected loss of $12,260.
Okay, so Acme charges $2,000 for a $12,260 risk. LR is 63%.
Got it. Perfect. Now, the tech company, thanks to its superior automation, they assume a 30% efficiency advantage. They can charge 15% less. So $1,700 for that same exact risk.
And now their loss ratio is $1,260 divided by $1,700, which comes out to about 74%.
Right. And if you only look at the loss ratio, 74% for the tech co versus 63% for Acme, the tech company looks like it has much worse unit economics. This is the highly misleading conclusion the sources explicitly warn investors against.
The reality is that if they can price 15% lower and still achieve the same net margin, it just fundamentally changes the market dynamics. They become what the source calls a rocket ship company. Because Acme, on the other side, just doesn't have the growth, the conversion, or the retention that the price leader does.
And what's so fascinating is that this structural advantage gives them a strategic choice. They could charge $2,000 like everyone else and pocket the difference as higher margin. That's the traditional choice. Or they can convert that efficiency into a lower price, which drives growth.
And their bias is clearly towards growth.
It has to be. Because for them, scale itself accelerates their efficiency. And this is key. Traditional businesses face diminishing returns to scale. They get big, they get bloated. But tech businesses built on proprietary AI and data, they experience accelerating returns. The more data they get, the smarter their models become, the better their automation gets, and the more untouchable their pricing becomes.
Their profit frontier actually moves outward the bigger they get.
Exactly. And this wasn't some recent pivot. The sources showed a snapshot of their original strategy slide from 2015.
2015. And it mentioned two things that haven't changed. Technology AI back when that wasn't common business talk, and untouchable pricing.
The entire strategy is right there. Technology leadership leads to precision and automation, which leads to price leadership, which drives growth leadership, which results in the maximum long-term profit pool. That compounding advantage is the structural moat, and it just gets deeper every single time a new customer joins.
So, to synthesize this deep dive from the materials you shared, the whole long-term value of this company hinges on that decision they made way back in 2015 to build a unified system capable of proprietary data science to achieve unmatched precision and superior automation. And this combination lets them choose growth over short-term margin, aiming for long-term profit maximization through this compounding structural efficiency.
And that accelerated return dynamic, the idea that efficiency and precision actually compound exponentially with growth, that's truly the most profound insight here. If the bigger they get, the more efficient they become, it creates a runaway effect, which leaves an important question for you, the learner, to think about as you reflect on these sources.
If technology eradicates the concept of diminishing returns to scale in a historically mature industry like insurance, does that mean the very concept of a slow-growing, mature industry is now fundamentally obsolete?
We appreciate you sharing your sources and joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.